Sean's listening as well to critique.
Okay, welcome to our second webinar from the High Growth Summit series. Today, great privilege of welcoming Serena Humphrey. Now, I've known Serena for probably about 6-7 years now, at
12.
least. Oh, 12, okay. A lot longer now, I'm feeling a lot older. But Serena is a real expert when it comes to finance. So any business wanting to understand finances, get into growth, understand how to grow, yeah, she is the actual lady to speak to. So it's a great privilege and honor to have her here today to take you through how you master your finances for growth. Now, before I introduce you, before sort of Serena kicks off, a quick technical question. Basically, if you've got a link which says YouTube video, then you can watch the whole video or basically the webinar on YouTube. If you've got any questions, then flick back to this or the screen within the webinar jam and post the questions within the actual chat room. So, without any further ado, over to Serena.
Stuart, thank you very much. I'm really delighted to be here and to be doing this webinar this afternoon with you. Right, so my name's Serena Humphrey, and a little bit of background. I'm a chartered management accountant, which means I'm the commercial sort of accountant, which means I'm more about creating the future than counting the beans of what you did last year. Helping them to get the financial results they're looking for in their business, but more about their life. The thing is, as business owners, we're completely and utterly overloaded with information, with things to do, responsibilities, keeping the plate spinning. So finance needs to be the rock in the centre of all that, because without money, without cash to trade, we actually don't have a business and we don't have a future. And finance is the certainty and the thing that makes everything else possible in our businesses. And it shouldn't be something that's a constant source of stress and problems for you. Now, the great news is it's actually really easy and it's straightforward to manage your finances if you know the rules and you put some of the foundations and structures in place. It's not like when you're managing people who, let's face it, can be unpredictable. And leadership is an art that I've yet to master, and it's one that's ever changing. But finances behave in a very certain way. They're very predictable and they reflect exactly what you're doing in your business. So they are the perfect mirror to reflect how you're performing and how your business is doing. It gives you that unequivocal feedback on exactly how you're doing. So as a business owner, you've got to know the rules, and you have to be sure that this is a critical area of your business that is under constant control. And it's not something you can just pick up and put down again, because those kind of problems happen in your business when you're not paying attention. So we've got 3 parts to this afternoon's webinar. We're going to talk about knowing where you're going, because if you don't know where you're going, it's unlikely you're going to get to where you want to go to. So that's a fairly classic one. Second part is what information, skills and mastery you need to be in control of your finances. And the third part is all about cash, which when we've got to talk about one key thing in an hour-long seminar, cash is probably the main really cover off. Now, I'm really happy during this webinar for you to ask questions as they crop up. So if you've got anything you'd like to ask as we're going along, please just type that into the chat area. And at the end of each section, we've got a break to specifically answer any questions that come up as a result of what we're covering. So really keen for you to get whatever you need out of this webinar, and please ask questions if you've got a burning question or something you'd like to comment on. If that's okay, we'll move on to part 1. So part 1 is you've got to know where you're going, and this is all about having a financial strategy and a roadmap you and your business. Okay, now we talk about financial success, and you hear accountants and all sorts of gurus telling you what you should and ought to do in your business. But the fact is, achieving financial success has got to be down to what it means for you. When we look at business success across the UK particularly, which is where I've been studying, most businesses are only just getting by. Most companies just trade at a fraction of their capability, both in terms of the people's capability and what the business could perform at. And when we get even deeper than that, it's worse, because most businesses actually fail. And we're talking somewhere between 80 and 90% of companies don't make it through 5 years. You know, if we go back 15, 20 years ago, things were more predictable and it was safer in business. Now we have more change and more uncertainty than we've ever had before. And we can't guarantee that what we did last year or 5 years ago will mean we can survive for 10 years. And when we think about a personal level of why we're in business, it's fundamentally for us as people to secure our futures for ourselves and our families. But only 2% of people are financially free by the age of 65. And I really have to ask why, when we have so many business owners in the UK, over 5 million, And we have no shortage of entrepreneurial spirit, skill, ambition, and hard work. So there are some fundamental questions as to why so few people ever manage financial success. Now, what do we even mean by financial success, though? Because I think it can only be defined by you, and it must be on your terms. I don't think you should let anybody tell you as a business owner what turnover you should be aspiring to or what level of profit you should want to make, because it's got to be what you want. And I do a lot of work with my clients and helping them to define what that looks like for them. And that comes from having a personal financial strategy and a business financial strategy. And when we do that, we look at three things. Where do you want to go and why? It's not just about saying, I want 1 million, 5 million, 10 million turnover. What life will that give you? What does a great business look like for you? And for a lot of people, lifestyle is really, really important. And knowing what do you need to buy that lifestyle for you? You then need to know exactly precisely where you are right now financially. And this is where a lot of companies, again, have very little idea of exactly what their financials look like, mainly because financial information is quite poor across the board in small businesses. When you know where you want to go, and then when you know where you are right now, you can then create some kind of plan to get to where you want to go to. So the bottom line of this is you need a financial strategy. So first of all, and I think it really is important that this does come first, is we need a personal financial strategy in our business. There's very, very few business owners ever consider this piece of the picture. They go straight in for what turnover they want, and they don't ever consider what they're doing it for. So having a personal financial strategy is really knowing what you want, actually you as a person, what makes you happy, where you're going, and why do you want it? I think there are so many people out there telling us what we should want and what we ought to do and what we should do and what we could do. And we've really got to tune into what we want, because that's where we're going to spend so much time running our businesses. You know, and alongside that, how do you feel about risk and security? Are you prepared to keep putting things on the line for your business, or do you want to be building up security as you go? Are you prepared to keep putting everything on red as you go through your business? And how long have you got to go there to get there? If you're in your 20s, you've got 40 years to think about it. If you're like me, you've got a little bit less time than that. How much of a cash buffer do you have? And I mean personally here, you know, we're going to talk about the business cash buffer later, but on a personal level, you know, you need to have a cash buffer in place. And how much do you need? I am anal on this score. I like to have a year's money in the bank, probably because I'm an accountant, and but I need to make sure I have cash there. So if I have a bad month or a bad quarter or something happened, I've got some cash there. And have you got investments, pensions and savings set up for your future? Are you set up for the future? Are you thinking that one day my business will be my pension? Because I have to tell you, for most people, that will never come true. So you do need to start to think about that, because then we think about how the business needs to support you to get there. And then your business exit plan. Again, if you're in your 20s, you're probably not even thinking about that. And I know when I was in my 20s and 30s, in fact, Stuart used to talk to me about my exit plan. It wasn't on my radar at all. But now increasingly it does start to play in my mind of, you know, what will happen to my business in 10 or 15 years time? And, you know, and what could I create that will help me in the future? And then when you know that personally, you can think what your plan is to get to where you want to go to. Now, most people will never consider this part of their business or even consider it as part of what they're doing. So if you can answer some of these questions, it's going to really help you to get clear on what your business needs to give you and your future. And it really helps to focus your decision making about what you're doing next in your business. Okay, everybody with me so far? Have we got any questions or feedback?
No, just some great comments with regards in terms of separating out the personal and the actual business finances. I think, you know, it's critical to do. Most people don't actually do that, but treating them separate, it is quite key, I think.
I think because what most people do is that they focus purely on business turnover, hope there'll be some profit left over, and hope then that will then give them the life they're looking for. And you see companies all the time do it the same as I do. It just very, very rarely pans out that way. So I think we have to look at things in a different way if we want people to get different results.
And I know it's slightly off tack, but one of the questions, you know, coming out is how do you actually choose almost a financial advisor, an IFA, who understands both? Because very often I come across IFAs very good from the personal side, but ignore the actual business. But you need an IFA who really understands sort of both from that side. Have you any advice around that?
You're absolutely spot on. It's getting even accountants who understand both as well, but IFAs. But I think here my thing is, I don't think you can abdicate mastering your own finances. I think if you have this awareness, you can take that to your advisors and you can make sure that strategy is joined up.
Yeah.
So rather than us giving that responsibility to our accountants and advisors to hopefully they'll patch our future together for us, I think we need to start to take control of that ourselves.
Yeah, you're the CEO of your own finances.
I like it.
I love it.
Love it. Write that down. I'll write a blog about it. Okay, so moving on to our business financial strategy. Same principles as we talked about the personal stuff, but this is really building on the personal strategy. So again, where are you right now? What net profit do you make? And by that, I mean a profit percentage, because you might be making 100K net, which might be great if you turn over $1 million, but terrible if you turn over 10 million. So this net profit percentage is something I talk about a lot, and we'll cover that a little bit later. What's the value of your balance sheet? You know, again, we've got to be very careful you're building something of value and that your balance sheet is strong enough to withstand, you know, a spell of bad luck or no sales or something happening. What's the value of your business? Obviously relevant if you want to think about selling one day. You need to know how that value is going to be based. How much cash are you carrying, and have you got cash buffers in your business? And what's your credit rating? Again, so few companies look at their credit rating to even see how they're being presented to the world. So if you've got a poor credit rating, it's going to be affecting the business you get in, because suppliers and customers will credit check you to see if you're worth doing business with. And where do you want to be and by when? And again, you can't answer that until you know what you want personally, because you have no idea of knowing how much turnover you need if you don't know what you want personally. And therefore, what profits do you need to be making? Are you building to sell? You need, whatever you do, I believe you need to build your business to give you choices in the future. So I personally have no particular ambition to sell, but I am building it to give me options and choices so that I could sell or I could keep it. I don't want to be boxed in. I want to have a choice. Building a cash buffer and controlling your cash is a critical part of your business financial strategy. And building your balance sheet, just so you are building value and you're building security into your business. You're not just running on empty the whole time. Now, assuming you've gone through that process, you now know where you want to get to. You then need to work this backwards to how to get there. Traditional business planning would say you've got to come up with the turnover figure, and then you work at how many people you need to deliver that turnover, and you bang all your costs in, and then you get to the bottom line and go, oh, is that enough profit? Now, I personally think turnover is a really lazy goal, because it's very easy to just pluck a figure out of thin air and then just start adding a load of cost into your business model. I say you start at the bottom, you work at how much net cash profit you need to make after dividends, after tax, what you want to earn, what you want in your pension, which is based on your personal financial strategy. And then you work it back upwards to turnover. It will give you a much leaner, more efficient business model. And it means you're going for the right goal. You're not just going for the obvious ego-driven turnover goal. Because I don't care if you turn over 1 million, 6 million or 15 million. The profit and the cash is all that matters, and the value of your business. You see so many companies turn, I'm sure you see, Stuart, people turning over 10, 15, 20 million, and they've really got nothing to show for it. If I go into some companies, they're thinking, you know, I've got my tiny company and I make more money than you. You know, so it really isn't about turnover. It's got to be about this bottom line. And the bottom line, I don't just mean hard cash. I mean the bottom line for you and your life and what you want for your family and what do you want your life to look like. I know, you know, I've been there and done it the hard way, where the business came first and I had no life and I was stressed and worked 80, 90 hours a week. And I know that is not what I want. So my goals are very much driven by what I want personally. So I talk a lot about radical financial results in my business, and I've created what I believe radical financial results look like, having worked with about 300 companies over the last few years. So for me, it looks like this. It's a long-term, sustainable, financially fit business. You're consistently generating the level of sales that you want to need. And that means you know your route to market and you have a solid marketing plan. So you know how to generate sales. You can confidently see your finances several months ahead. So you've got good forecasting and you can see where you're going. You've got consistent profits of at least 7 to 10%. Now, I mean after tax and after dividends here. So I'm looking at retained cash profit in your business. Too many people are scraping by on 1 and 2%. And I have to tell you, that is not enough if you want to survive in this day and age. Having a really strong balance sheet and cash flows we talked about. Having strong cash flow, it gives you choices. It means you can withstand a quiet period, but it means you can take advantage of things like you might want to sponsor something. You might want to take on a new person and invest. You might want to go on super duper training course. You might want to take a big whack of cash out to pay for, I don't know, move house or put a new kitchen in. But you've got choices if you build cash up into your business. You need to be paying yourself properly. So it's no good if your business looks great at the bottom line, but you're paying yourself a pittance, because that is not what radical looks like to me. You've got to be paying yourself. And that, again, is driven by what you set your personal financial strategy to be. So quite recently, my husband and I worked out what did a great life look for us at home, how often we go out, buy clothes, go on holiday. And then we worked out what we had to earn. And then we said the business had to pay us that much money. And it was such a radical approach from seeing what kind of month we'd had, seeing how much profit we made, and then seeing what we could pay ourselves. It completely flipped it on its head. And we now run the business in a completely different way with that objective. And this is a really important one for me, living the life that you want with freedom, not the life that someone's telling you should have or the life you think you should have, but choosing the life you want, whether that's finishing at 2 on a Friday, or not working Monday mornings, or having weekends off, whatever it is for you. Make your business give you what you want. And that you're constantly planning for the future, and you've got this really clear vision of where you want to go, not just lurching from month to month, year to year, and hoping next year you have a better year, and hoping one day your business will be your pension, because it just isn't going to pan out that way without some planning. So that's the end of part 1. Bang on time, coincidentally. So I'd love to know if anyone's got any questions or thoughts or observations on that first section.
Okay, so a couple of questions sort of coming in. First one, in terms of timeline, because you mentioned obviously coming with your personal finance strategy. Very much that's several years ahead, you know, and you're talking about retirement that could be 20, 30, 40 years ahead for some individuals. But with a business, how far ahead should you be sort of planning?
I think it's very hard to plan these days beyond the 2 to 3 year horizon, because I think things change so quickly. Technology is shifting markets really quickly. Globalization is shifting things. Again, this is individual, but for me, I'm very, very clear what my big vision is and what my big ambitions are for what I want to achieve personally. I don't know what my business will look like in 3, 4, 5 years' time. I know the kind of thing we'll be doing, and I know the direction of travel. In fact, the super North Star that Floyd talked about at the summit, that is very, very clear for me. But as you know, I'm not massive on micro planning strategy. But I do know from my personal side what it needs to look like. So I know what my pensions need to look like for the next 20 years. I know how much money the business has to find for me. And I know how much money I want to be earning for my personal life. So that makes the business side actually quite clear. It gives me a lot of in terms of what I personally want to achieve. I want to learn for me personally first. It doesn't come from what could the business do. So I like to think of it as the business is the vehicle for giving us what we want for our life. The business not being the be all and the end all on its own.
So you actually begin with the end in mind, which I love. On that side, very simple principle, but
it is. And it's just even things like, if I need to, let's say you need to get a couple of £1,000 a month into your pension, and that's got to happen, and if you did that, your future would be, and again, think about, where do you want to live when you're 65, 70, 80? I know it's hard to think that far ahead, but if you don't think ahead now, you're going to end up with what you end up with, not what you plan for. And actually, once you've got, it's not an easy piece of work to do necessarily, but get a good advisor who can relate to that. Get those numbers worked out, and then you know what your business needs to give you. It makes everything so much clearer, rather than this constant worrying, fretting, back of fag packet calculations, and hoping one day your business might give you a future.
No, that's key points and stuff there. One of the other questions that are coming through is about investment in the business. So if you've got a whole load of money at the moment, you're getting a maximum of 0.01% interest in the mutual bank. Should you be investing that in your business? Because if potentially you can get 7 to 10% in terms of return, or more. Is that a good place for investment as opposed to putting it into an ISA or something else at the moment?
Well, the first thing I do is I make sure for certain I had enough personal cash in my cash buffer at home, and I got enough cash buffer in my business. Now, again, for home, as a rule of thumb, I like a year, but I am anal. I accept that. But you could go for 2 to 3 months, or maybe even 6 months at home. So if you couldn't draw your dividends for 6 months, could you still pay your bills at home? And in the business, I like to have 2 to 3 months business overhead put away, so that if something happens, you've got buffer cash. That is the very, very first place I would invest. Obviously, making sure that all your trade creditors and things are up to date.
That's almost your safety net.
Safety net, and have that, and don't let that go, because you see so many companies who get into trouble because they had no cash to see them through something difficult, or they couldn't take an opportunity because they hadn't got enough cash to invest in another person or a new product or something. And then again, it's becoming, going back to what you want for your life and your business. What would you invest in that will give you that return? You can't just randomly go and invest in something. It's got to be, is this going in the right direction? So is that, if I brought that new salesperson in, that will give us that lift in turnover and profit? So you've got to be really clear what you want and where you're going to go for to decide where to invest.
Okay. One other question sort of coming through is really, a lot of particular small businesses, they tend to run their business more as a lifestyle type of business. So in some ways, it's like, how do we get around the actual tax man, and how much stuff can we put through the business versus how much stuff can we actually do outside the actual sort of business? In some ways, that sways the accounts. So would you recommend almost having a clean set of accounts saying if this was not to happen, and almost an account still saying realistic?
I am very, very straight when it comes to tax and accounts and records. I think there's no point trying to fool yourself apart from anybody else. Play it clean, play it straight, put things through the business as they are. And I'm sorry, pay your taxes. We do need to pay tax. That's the way the world works. And if you don't keep clean books and records, you don't actually know how you're trading, which doesn't often make life difficult. So I personally believe in, although I'm a commercial accountant, not a tax accountant, I believe in just playing everything dead straight. Brilliant. Keep it clean. And grow up and grow a real business that you don't need to worry about ducking and diving and not paying your taxes.
Very sane and sensible advice. Okay, over to you, Serena, for the next part.
Okay, so we're moving now on to part 2. Now, this is about information, skills, and mastery. Okay. I have a really big belief and bugbear. In business, in small businesses, we are grave danger of abdicating all responsibility for the understanding of our business finances. And I see this just so many times. Businesses get into really bad trouble because they have abdicated the responsibility for even understanding, saying things like, oh, my accountant does that, I let my bookkeeper get on with that, I don't get involved in that, oh, I don't do numbers. The problem is, as a business owner, it's down to you. Legally, it's down to you. You're the one who signs off all the tax returns and the company house returns. But more than that, if you don't understand your numbers, you are going to get into trouble one day, I promise you, because you cannot abdicate that to anybody. I'm not saying do the accounts. By all means, employ qualified, skilled people who know how to do your books and do your accounts, but you need to understand them. And if you don't, then you need to find out how you can understand your figures, because people make all sorts of mistakes and assumptions, and you just have to know where you are. Any part of being successful in businesses, you have got to know your numbers, which means you've got to understand them. So I'm going to go through here what you need. We assume you've got your strategy and we know where you want to go. What do you need to get on track and stay on track? So, is your business financially fit? And this is a real baseline place to start, because if it isn't, you need to get your business to this place before you can think about growing it. Every single action and decision in your business has a financial impact, and your finances mirror whatever you do. Now, what the lovely thing about this is, if you're rubbish at leadership, it will show up in your finances at some point. If you've got staff problems, if you've got production problems, if you're rubbish at marketing, anything and everything, it's like holding an enormous mirror up to your business and seeing it all reflected back to you. So finance is the ultimate measure of how you're performing. So with understanding that, we need to be measuring the things that matter on a consistent basis, because it's like, imagine trend lines on a graph. If you're not looking at that constantly, you won't see when things go off track. And I like to liken it as having a really sensitive burglar alarm around your business. So you imagine all the pressure points where you maybe got a window that someone could come in, or you've got a door. It's like having alarms around your business that measure if someone break in. The minute you stop measuring, you think, oh, I've not been burgled for months, let's turn the alarm off. Things will go wrong when you're not looking. So this constant measurement of the very key things is critically important. And if you haven't got financial fitness, then running your business actually is quite a battle. I'm sure some of you may know of businesses, or you may even have one yourself, where it's all just pretty stressful every day because you just haven't got that level of financial fitness. So what am I talking about when I talk about financial fitness? We're talking here about having a financial strategy, personal and business, because then we at least know what we're aiming for. If we don't know that, we've got a pretty tough job ahead of ourselves. You have got great management information in your business, and we'll touch a bit on that a little bit later. You have all that information at your fingertips as well, so you know where to find it. It's not stuffed in a drawer. It's not stuff that your accountant's got that you never look at. You have great financial skills and understanding, so you know how to read your information, you know what questions to ask, and you know if something doesn't look right. That's half the battle, going, that doesn't look right, can you go away and look at it again, please? You need to be profitable, you need to have a strong balance sheet, taxes put away in a separate bank account. I'm talking VAT, corporation tax and any personal tax. Make one thing really clear here, taxes are not your money. They do not belong in your current account. They belong in a separate bank account. If you are using your taxes, next year's corporation tax, this quarter's VAT, to run your cash flow, then I'm telling you now, you have a cash shortage in your business somewhere. And that might be hard to hear, but if you can take that on the chin, you need to just realise that that cash should be put away. It's not part of your working capital, it's not part of your cash flow. We touched on this before, paying yourself and your team properly. I see quite a few businesses where they seem to be doing okay, but only because they don't pay themselves very much, and their team are quite underpaid as well. They're just under so much potential wage pressure, and then the business starts to fall apart. Great forecasting, so seeing what this year and next year's look like financially, and regular and consistent marketing that works. I mean, I've always believed that finance was the most important part of a business. I still think it's blooming important, but what I've learned since setting up this particular business is marketing. If you can't market what you do and you can't get your route to market, doesn't matter how brilliant your business is. And if you get your consistent marketing working, you can then know that you can get your turnover in, which means your profit will come out of the bottom of the business. So management information. So management information, management accounts, MI, whatever you want to call it. This is my specialist subject. This is what I'm trained in as a commercial accountant. And I have some particularly big bugbears and strong views about this. Quarterly management accounts are never, ever okay. It is not okay for you to wait 4 months to find out how you did 4 months ago. It's just not good enough. And if you have an accountant telling you it is, you need to change accountants or educate them, because it's not okay. Accounts packages do not give you management information, whether it's Xero, QuickBooks, Sage. They are accounts packages. They are record keeping packages. They're not management information packages. So they may give you some information, but they certainly will not give you the big picture that you need to be fully in control of what you're doing. And as primitive as it might sound, Excel, just dropping your information out of Excel and forecasting it and just presenting it properly takes very little time, and it gives you everything you need to run your business. If your accountant gives you your management accounts, and if they come in statutory year-end format, so they look like the statutory accounts that go to Company House, not useful. That is not management accounts, I promise you. Those accounts are only useful for Company's House and nobody else. They are not in a useful format. They will not tell you what you need to know for your business. So if you're getting that again, please go and have a conversation. And most accountants do not get management accounts, and there's a reason for that. I'm a trained commercial accountant. I've trained all my life in small companies, Northern Foods and Next. And I cannot put your statutory accounts together, and I can't do your tax returns, and I can't do audit. But I do know what management accounts look like. Most accountants are very highly trained and competent in statutory accounts and tax, but they won't necessarily understand management accounts. So just be aware, if you're getting blank looks from your accountant, it's a completely different field and qualification. High quality commercial information that tells you what you need to keep your life on track. And it does look different to what you're getting from your accountant at the moment. So this is the information that you do need in your business, no matter how small or how large your business is. Unless you are completely awash with cash, you need a 13-week rolling cash flow forecast. It's one of the most incredibly powerful things you can do in your business, because you get to see the detail and you get to make sure you can always see 3 months ahead. And I have a theory, a working theory that I've proved in the last 30 years, is if you could see 13 weeks ahead at any point in time, you're unlikely to get into trouble. Because anything you can see, you'll see it coming in time to fix it. So if you see a cash flow crunch coming at week 13, you have got 3 months to fix that. So people who do these kind of rolling cash flow forecasts do not get into trouble. A weekly flash report is something I use a lot with my clients, and it is massively powerful. This can be as simple as you like. And when we talk about flash, it needs to be very, very quick to prepare. So not some laborious thing that takes you all day, but 10 to 15 minutes tops. And it's something that's designed to help you look forward in your business. So for example, it might be sales for the month so far, future order book, pipeline, any measure that you can use to look ahead. So for example, if I go to a client and they've just got last month's accounts and they are well below budget, rather than going, oh my God, what happened to last month? Why didn't we see it coming? I'm looking ahead with them. What does November, December, January look like? We already know what the next 3, 4, 5 months will look like based on any intelligence we can use to predict sales. And I know not every company has solid order books, but there are indicators in every business that tell us an idea of where our sales are likely to be. It could be marketing activity, it could be number of inquiries, but there is always something that can indicate to us what the future looks like. So we want to be looking forwards, not looking backwards. Monthly management accounts that include a full year profit forecast. I'm going to show you a template for that in a minute or so. Excuse me. Trended KPIs, so key performance indicators and graphs. Really massive fan of graphs because it can be hard to read a page of numbers. You know, a lot of people have, they call it sort of number dyslexia, where they stare at a page of numbers, they just see ink. And that's fine, I really get that. So I think graphs are just a fantastic way of bringing things to life for us. We can graph anything from year-on-year sales, profit margins, margin percentages, order book, anything that tells you a picture. And the graph then tells us if that picture's starting to go down or get worse, we will see it straight away. And that helps us to take action quickly because we want consistent income, consistent profit. We don't want to be firefighting and struggling for cash flow when we could be running our business and moving forward. And I think for every managing director, business owner, you need to see your weekly debtors and creditors reports. It's just so important because you need to just keep that overline view of who you owe money to and who's money to you. Just blindly relying on your account staff to keep on top of that without you having any kind of input in it can be really dangerous. And it just gives you a really good feeling for who's paying you, who's not, is there a problem? Because often people don't want to bring those problems to you. So that they're trying to manage it themselves, and often a phone call or intervention from you can get something resolved really quickly. Okay, so we're talking about a mass sea of numbers on a page. This is a good example of that. Okay, if you're looking from left to right across the page, we can see here we've got, can you see that? Nope, sorry. Yeah. Time delay on the sheet updating there. So this is what here is an actuals and forecast profit and loss. So going left to right, we've got all those numbers in blue, and they're the actuals for each month as we're going through. And then we've got forecast figures for the last 4 months of the year in black. Now, this is what most management accounts won't give you. You won't get a printout from Xero or Sage that tells you that. But this is critical because we want to know what our full year forecast sales are. We want to know what our full year forecast gross margin is running at. We need to know what our net profit is forecast to be and what our tax bill is going to be. We can see from this what our forecast tax bill is going to be, and we can make sure we've got money put away. So this is the one single most critical document I would put into any company I work with, even if they're turning over 100K or 10 million. It is a critical page and it gives you everything you need to know. And if you can see at the very bottom, I know this is quite small to look at, there's something you won't see on any of the profit and loss. It's something at the bottom that says cash items. Now, anyone who works at accounts know that you don't include cash items in a profit and loss account. But for me, if you've got things like any bank loans going out or you're paying back a director's loan, those things have to come out of profit. Whatever accounting terms you might want to use, they've got to come out of. I show those at the bottom of a profit and loss report. And again, this is another great reason why stick it on a spreadsheet. You can do whatever on earth you want to do with it. You can make it mirror your business. So when you look at your profit and loss account, please make sure that whoever's doing it for you, that it looks like your business. I do not want to see print, post, stationery and advertising stuck on one line because that doesn't tell me anything. I want to see cost lines that literally reflect how I do business, the things that I spend, in a way that I can completely and utterly relate to. So it shouldn't feel like an accounting document. It should feel like you're looking at your own business. It should be a mirror back to you of your business so you can really, really understand it. So that's if you like the number one document I would put into any business, and one thing you should make sure you have in your company too. Okay. So just got an example here of some of the kind of graphs that I would also recommend you have in your business. And again, these are just really lovely, simple visual aids that tell you exactly where you are. I don't know about you, but I can quite often be guilty of thinking, oh, it feels really busy at the moment. I think I'm much busier than last year, but that's very, very subjective. So I get my graphs and I go, oh, maybe not quite as good as I thought, but it's just very, very good visual thing. And these are great to share with your teams as well, as you can share maybe not your net profit, but you could share certain parts of these with your management teams. But so in the top graph, we're looking at year-on-year sales. So you've got straight away, you can identify trends. If you've got certain months that always peak in the year, you can look at year-to-date income. They've got a profit there on net profit after dividends and tax, just so you can show very, very clearly where the profits are. But you can put anything on a graph. You can put gross margin percentage, your order book, your pipeline, your number of inquiries. In fact, my view, more graphs the better. More graphs, less numbers. As long as we are understanding the business, I think that's just very powerful for you. And then moving on to the financial skills and mastery piece. If you just get one thing through on this webinar this afternoon, it's that understanding finance is one of the most important skills of all for you to master. I believe it's quite possible for you to get through business being a bit of a rubbish leader. Okay, you might not have a great business, but you can probably get away with it. If you don't master your finances, it can last long term. I think because ultimately something will happen that you didn't see coming and you don't know how to fix. So I think it's just such a critical area to get just even a small level of understanding in. And I said this earlier on, never ever abdicate the understanding of your finances to anybody else. If you don't understand your profit and loss on your balance sheet, please just go and swallow your pride and ask someone to explain it to you. I've had a guy, a client of yours, Stuart. He ran a manufacturing company, 8 million turnover, been running it for about 10 years. And he said, Serena, can you just talk me through the balance sheet? Because I haven't got a clue what my accountant talks about and he rattles through it. And that's a really classic thing. Remember that when we train as accountants, we trained for years and years to learn a completely different language. And then we use that language in business and wonder why business owners don't understand us. So it's really important to know that you can ask for help and say that. Another thing, bookkeeping, it is not a low-level admin job, so please don't treat it like one. I know that packages like Xero and QuickBooks say they do it all for you, but unless you know what you're doing, you can end up in a really terrible mess on your bookkeeping. Bookkeeping at any level requires a decent level of understanding. It's a pretty complex thing. Getting your bookkeeping right or wrong, it needs a fairly decent level of understanding. And we put Xero in place actually quite recently this year. And even we've been caught out by it because it tries to be clever, it tries to do it all for you, and actually it makes such sweeping assumptions that we've got a lot of problems in our package building up. So just that level of don't assume that accounting is this simple thing that's been de-skilled. Without some skills and understanding, you're going to get into a pickle with it. And so just finishing off on financial mastery then, it is okay to ask for help. Finance is a complex area. I mean, I spent 6 years qualifying. I've been doing this for 30 years. It's natural to me, but as a business owner, it's not people's areas natural understanding. So it really is okay to say, can you just help me with that? I do not understand that term. And I would say that, you know, even if it's your accountant, your bookkeeper, just say, ask them to explain it. And it's your accountant's job to help you understand and to use the right language. It's not your job to learn their job. You know, if accountants expect you to understand what they're talking about and not prepared to meet you, then I suggest you find another accountant, because you will not be getting the best from them. What we teach is we teach people to understand for themselves and to be empowered and to get the skills into their business. It is not for you to understand what your accountant is talking about to you. So that's the end of the skills and mastery and information piece. What have we got on there, Stuart?
Okay, a few questions also for you. Okay, opening a can of worms. How do you choose a good accountant?
Okay. Shall I be controversial here or not?
Go for it.
Okay. I've been in business for 16 years in Nottingham now. The number of accountants I would recommend are on 3 fingers. I think if you're going to find an accountant, make sure it's on a recommendation from someone who you actually trust, and that you find out what they can do. And also be really clear, what do you want from your accountant? Do you just want to just take care of year end and tax and just take care of that? Or are you expecting proactive advice from them? If you're wanting management accounts, make sure they know how to do management accounts properly. And if you want to know what they look like, you can give me a shout and I can tell you. But I think, and also someone that you are comfortable with, someone who you understand and can talk English to you. And if you're talking to new accountants, make sure the person who comes to see you is who will be looking after you, they're not just a hunter. You need to be talking to the person who will be looking after your business. Another tip is if you go with a large firm, they like to be having big constant training programs. So you may end up with having a different person every year looking after your account. I personally don't want that in my business. I want someone who's with me for the long term. So smaller firms can be a better bet for that. Okay. Also, smaller firms tend to have lower overheads, so the charge out rates are better. And in a smaller firm, you'll normally get more partner attention.
Okay.
So you don't want your fee being absorbed by lots of junior people doing stuff and people relearning your account every year. Most important thing is, be clear what you want from them and be clear that they can talk English to you, and you could ask a stupid question and feel they would answer you and help you. So in other words, are quite an unaccountant accountant.
And you can pick up the phone anytime without them charging.
Yes, that's really important as well. You don't want to get a great big bill. Oh, well, you rang me last week and here's a £150 bill. Definitely, yeah. But just make sure you're really comfy with them.
Yeah, some great advice there. A couple of other questions sort of came through. One is on the graph you showed earlier, or the chart you showed earlier, you showed obviously the P&L, your sales and the net cash and stuff coming out the bottom. And you put forecasts on there, and you got the actuals. You didn't put budget on there. So one of the questions is, should budget and stuff be on there? And if so, how often should you be really looking at the budgets?
Okay, so when we had the page there, in fact, we can pop back to that. I can talk you through it. Let's wait for that to catch up. Okay, so the columns to the left, which are in blue, they're the actuals for the year so far. The last 4 months of forecast. Now, the words forecast and budget can be quite interchangeable. In accountant land, what we mean by that is I set a budget at the start of the year. Then as I start getting into the year, I start changing it and we start to call it the forecast. Now, that's just an accountancy thing. You can call it budget, you can call it forecast. It really doesn't matter. Now, personally, I don't think there's any merit in leaving a budget set in stone once you're into a new year. Unless you're a PLC that's reporting to the city and you've got to maintain the forecast you gave them, I think a forecast is a very live thing, and I think we should change it with what we know. So if we know that materials have gone up, we need to move our margin, or we're going to have a better sales time, I would forecast it. Because what I want to see is that a far column at the right called full year forecast. I want to see my most likely outcome for the year, my turnover, my profit, my bottom line, and what I'm going to earn on my tax bill. I don't see any merit in that not being as live and up to date as possible. So I reforecast monthly with my clients. Okay. And I encourage them to do so because it means you've got your finger on the pulse, you're looking at what's going on and you're reflecting reality.
Okay, that makes sense, certainly.
You can also use it then to scenario plan. What if we do that? What if we take somebody on? What if we invest in that training program? What happens to our profit figure? So I say keep it live, unless you've got some kind of investment you've got to report to and they are expecting to see fixed results, just make it your own.
Yeah, that's a great distinction.
Your rules, your finances, you do it how you want to do it.
Yeah. That's a great distinction. And one final question which came through was, obviously you talked about the KPIs and gave some great examples around flashcards, KPIs, about I love your analogy about looking forward as opposed to sort of looking backwards, which it's critical for any sort of business. One of the challenges which often comes through businesses is who's accountable for making sure those KPIs are produced each week for a small business.
Yeah. This is a critical thing. Any level of information, financial information, management information, you've got to have, and I know Stuart does a lot of work on this, but roles, responsibilities, accountability, it's got to be somebody's job to do it religiously. And then it has to get used in the business, because if someone produces it and no one ever looks at it, guess what? They're going to stop producing it. So in the clients I train, it's about making sure that there is a single person who is accountable and responsible for the production of that by a certain time, usually on a Monday, because that's a great day to do your KPIs in your flash, and that that is then used in the weekly management meeting. So it's part of the structure, it's part of, and you make sure it's relevant and integral to the company by making sure it's the things we talk about. So what is the order book? How are we looking? How's the month looking? What did we do last week? What are our sales so far? What leads came in last week? But making it live, making it relevant. I think with KPIs, you can go overboard on KPIs, and a lot of them aren't actually K anymore, they're just PIs. But making sure what you're measuring, I'd rather you measure less, but make it really, really relevant and make it things that can change the future. So we talk about leading and lagging KPIs. The leading ones are the ones that are going to predict the future. Focus on things that are going to give you a better outcome. So because you know where you are in week 2, can you have a better month? Because you know how November looks now in the middle of October, can you have a better November? So just keep it real, keep it focused, and make sure it's really relevant. There's nothing more boring than pointless figures.
Totally. No, brilliant. Okay. On to the last section.
Last section you'll all be thrilled to hear, I'm sure. Whole hour on finance. Okay, we're going to talk about cash flow now, which is everyone's favourite subject, obviously. So cash flow, this is the ultimate measure of success. We can have a profitable company and have no cash. We can have a full order book and have no cash. In fact, we can have a profitable company with a full order book and go bust, because cash flow is the one ultimate thing that sets us apart. And this is where you can be a rubbish leader and survive, maybe. You cannot survive without cash. And if you don't have enough cash, trading illegally, which can put you in prison ultimately. So it's a pretty serious topic, which is why I think that 13-week rolling cash flow we talked about earlier is just so incredibly important. And as a business owner, if someone can prepare that for you every week, you have got such a tremendous visibility tool. It can just make such a lot of difference rather than sitting, fretting. I mean, if I met with a client recently, and he was constantly, he was spending up to a day a week reworking literally on the back of an envelope where he thought his cash would be. And within an hour, we put a rolling cash flow forecast and he could suddenly see the whole world. It just gave him so much comfort. So do not underestimate cash. Right, how cash behaves. Cash is just a reflection of what's going on in your business, okay? It mirrors your decisions and your performance in your business. And tight cash flow, it's not, people say to me, oh, the problem is I've got in my business, I've got really tight cash flow. That's not the problem. The cash is the symptom. The cash is the mirror, the reflection of how you're running your business. And this is going to sound blunt, but if your cash is tight, there is something wrong in your business that you need to fix. Cash isn't the problem, it is the symptom. And if you can't afford to take your VAT and your corporation tax out of your bank account and put it aside, again, you have not got enough cash in your business, because it isn't your money and it isn't part of your working capital, no matter what anyone else tells you. That's just not the way it is. So if you have got some tight cash flow, you really need to look at why that is, because there's something somewhere that needs fixing. Now, that might be you're just not profitable enough. It may be that you have debt coming out of your business that you can't see in your profit figure, and that is skewing what you think is profitable. I had a client a few years ago who ran it was an £8 million manufacturing firm, a different one to the one we mentioned earlier. And on paper, he made 150k net, which is not great on 8 million. But their cash was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. He had a commercial mortgage, so he had a big mortgage payment going out the bank. And he had a lot of short-term finance on machinery that had like a 20-year depreciation life. So he had a ton of cash going out the business below his bottom line profit figure that no one had ever shown him. So tight cash flow is telling you there is something wrong. And cash does need to be controlled. You can't just leave it to have a life of its own. You can't just leave cash to get on with it and see what happens. It needs firm control, otherwise it will run away with you, which is why seeing your debtors reports every week is critical. 13-week cash flow report every week, critical, because then that way you are find the path of least resistance, and that normally is not in your favour. So I've come up with some cash flow rules for a successful business, and I apply these to any business I work with. First of all, you've got to make a profit, because cash only comes from profit, unless you've had some investment cash or you've taken some debt into the business. But fundamentally, you've got to make profit, and you've got to make enough profit. You know, 2 and 3%, they might have been commonplace after the recession initially, but really we want to be 5% minimum after tax, after dividends. Ideally, building through 7 to 10%, because that means you've got strong profit. Strong profit will give you retained cash. And if you're in this kind of startup, getting going phase, you need to be well funded. Being undercapitalized at start is one of the biggest reasons you will not survive. There isn't enough cash there, because it is too difficult to do it without enough cash. Put your taxes away every single month without fail. They are not part of your working capital. They do not belong in your cash flow. They belong in a separate bank account. Personally, I like to use that to put into my mortgage offset account, because then at least it's doing something for me and it's earning some interest. And then I just pull it back in when my VAT is due. Using the rolling 13-week cash flow forecast, it's an absolutely critical document. And by the way, if you'd like the 13-week rolling cash flow, you can get in contact with me. I'm very, very happy to send you the template for that. Credit control, it is a competitive sport. There are very firm rules and regulations about how we best get money out of our customers. And getting paid on time is absolutely mission critical for you. If you are rubbish at credit control, your cash flow will be rubbish. And your your customers, they will sense blood. They know if you're rubbish at credit control, and they will pay you last. If you're interested in credit control, I've got a couple of blogs on my website about that. I've given you some very specific techniques for getting your cash in quicker. Weekly flash report, which we talked about earlier, that just very simple weekly document that's going to give you what you need to see months ahead. So, for example, in my business, I like to know that I have enough profit on the books to get through the next 3 months, because we have quite a lumpy business, not necessarily lots of recurring revenue. So for me, I need to know I can see 3 months ahead, then I can sleep easy then, and I know I'm doing enough marketing to keep bringing that business in. Then I'm not going into panic mode. And building this cash buffer, so you can see at least 2 to 3 months if you have a rubbish month, or just supposing you were ill or got knocked down or something, you've got cash in your business and you're not panicking and you're not worrying. Here's an example of that 13-week rolling cash flow forecast I mentioned before. This is just a snapshot of a few weeks here, but what we've got really is week by week going across the screen. And then we've got just literally as they would come out of your bank as you'd recognise them. So your main customers, you might list those main customers individually. So when do Fred blogs pay because they're a really big customer? All your individual direct debit standing orders, list them and when they go out the bank. Payroll, VAT, PAYE, and then your main suppliers. It's a very simple document, but it is absolutely brilliant in its simplicity for keeping you in control of your cash flow. And you can update it as you go. It becomes this lovely live document where you put in your actuals in, your refork. And if cash is tight, you get to move things around and play and say, well, I can't pay them there, but I can pay them there. Oh, and if I do that and move that and they pay us there, it all works out. It takes that juggling out of your head, gives you that headspace and gives you that clarity so you can keep on top of it. But the key with this document, like the others, is that routine reporting. If you try and control cash flow ad hoc, if you try and do management accounts ad hoc, it's not going to work, because things don't go wrong when you're paying attention. They go wrong when you're not looking. So it's a really important document to put in. And just to explain the link really between personal and business finances. Now, at the very start, we talked about linking up what you want from your personal life and you want from your business life. But flipping this on its head, if you're rubbish with money in your personal life and you live on credit cards and you've never got any money left at month end and you have to keep pulling more money out of the business, you will perpetuate that behavior in your business. So it's really interesting to look at how you run your finances, what your financial mindset is and how you behave around money. And I do a lot of work around money mindset, and it's a really fascinating area of understanding how we behave with money and where that comes from in our financial blueprint. But it's just worth being conscious of that and thinking, if you're a bit rubbish with money at home and you never budget and you never plan and you've never quite got enough for what you want to do, just see if you're running that behavior in your business as well. Because I think if you can identify that and get control of it, and the same principles, my clients, they take that cash flow forecast, they put it into their personal life. They take the budget and they put it into their personal life and they get control. Otherwise, you see people who are running amok at home and they just keep pulling more and more cash out of the business to prop them up, which means the business gets screwed over, really. So that's something interesting just to reflect on, because it's not something that comes up very often, but it's a very, very interesting one that can affect a business performance. And so really talking through all these things, I know when you're not a financial person, it feels like some kind of black art, but financial success is very predictable. And it's not a matter of luck or accident. There are some very specific things you can do, processes you can put in place, understanding your numbers, having the right numbers, knowing where you want to go, so having this route map and controlling it. You can literally control and decide what you want to make, how you want to make it, and what life you want to have. So it isn't a question of being lucky. So I guess my challenge to you, to borrow one of Stuart's lines, is just from what you've learned today, what do you think you could do differently in your finances?
Brilliant. Well, thank you for that, Serena. Interesting, we did a little poll while you were talking in terms of how many people had actually got cash flow forecasts.
Okay.
And the number was unequivocally 100% no. Nobody had a cash flow forecast.
Oh dear.
So really interesting sort of point there. But again, the emphasis of getting your cash flow forecast stuff in place, it's critical.
It is. I think As business owners, we put, you know, I don't know about you, I put everything I've got into my business. It's my baby, it's my life, you know, it's my passion, it really is. And the thought of doing all that for, you know, I've been doing it for 16 years, I've been doing it for at least another 20, to do all that and just hope I might be okay in the end, it's not enough. And to do all that and to be stressed about money, I mean, I don't stress about money because I have pretty good finances, as you might imagine. I worry about lots of other things, but I don't stress about money. I know what I can afford to do. And I just think, why would we do all this? And why do so many business owners end up with nothing? Not with the dream, not with what they wanted, not with the security, with too much stress, and not with the lifestyle they wanted. I believe that is completely and utterly avoidable if we just get a few basic things in place in our businesses. I think we could change the shape of business in this country. We could get business owners to get over this fear of finance, which is perpetuated by the accountants and bank managers, in my view. They don't make it easy. We need to make it easy because it's actually not that hard when you know the few of the basic rules.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. And one of the questions which came through the extra chat was clearly, if you're scaling a business, it's going to eat cash.
Yes.
And you can do a 13-week forecast, and it's good based on what you know in the past.
Yes.
So almost you don't know what you don't know?
You don't know, no. And I think if you are scaling, you've got to be a bit more sophisticated. So what we've covered here is the basics I think any business, no matter what size, should have. And there's an example, I worked with a client this morning, and we are scaling up from around the 250 mark to the million mark within the next 18 months. Now what we've done there is we've extended that monthly forecast out to show when exactly we need to recruit each new member of staff, what that's going to cost in recruitment, how much they'll cost us in salary before they start paying their way. And we've just literally mapped out month by month by month that scalability, so we can see if we've got a funding gap. So if you're scaling, you have got to be forecasting your profit and forecasting your cash.
And do you need a cushion of stuff in place?
Definitely.
For things that you don't know about?
If you're scaling, you're by definition operating in a risky place. So for example, you won't find the person you need when you need them. They very likely won't work out, and you've got to re-recruit. So you can have a gap in your revenue while that happens. You've got to pay 2 recruitment fees. Someone leaves when you weren't expecting it to. You need to have loads of buffers, loads of contingency built into that plan. You need to have plenty of marketing costs built in. And if you're relying on building a business and scaling through salespeople, you've got to know that you're in for a tough ride. Finding salespeople is, I think, the toughest challenge I see in businesses. And I would just say is, please do not assume that you're going to grow your turnover quickly. If you get your turnover forecast and put it on a graph, if your graph is a line going straight up on a 45-degree angle, I can tell you straight away you won't achieve that, because sales forecasts do not behave that way at all. They're much lumpier. So if your forecast looks like it assumes everything's going to go well and you're not going to have any pitfalls or problems, and you have no cash as a buffer, you are going to fall over at some point. So either get the funding you need or scale it back a bit. It's better to grow a bit slower and to make it safely than to try to go too fast, fall over and fail. And
presumably you have to go and get some funding, whether it's from a bank or private investors. Having these things in place, proving your master and you understand your financial position, is going to make it a lot easier using the financing and backing.
We hear that all the time when people go to banks or funders when they've got these documents in place. In fact, one client recently raised $500,000 from a Japanese investor, and they were so complimentary about the quality of their management information. They said, without it, we wouldn't have funded you, but you've demonstrated you have mastered your finances. And that was the clincher that got them the investment.
Brilliant.
So I would say, you can't do this. You cannot be successful and scale your business if you haven't mastered finance. I believe it's that strongly.
Brilliant.
If that wasn't true, why do 90% of companies fail? And they fail because they run out of cash. So I think, this stuff isn't hard, guys. It's some basic stuff you can choose to master, and you'll just transform your business.
Some wise words and stuff there. Final question somebody came in terms of saying, if they were going to try to find a book to advise about how to look after finances, what would be the one book you'd actually recommend?
The one I'm writing at the moment.
Oh, I thought I'd set that up.
Thanks for that, which isn't ready yet, of course. Do you know, this is a problem. This is why I'm writing my book, because every book you go and read on finance, it's about accounting, it's about double entry, and it's such a dull subject. There isn't one I know of. It's a tough one. Read my blog.
I mean, I must say, the only book I've come across which talks about mastering your own personal sort of finance is Tony Robbins' book.
Tony Robbins, yeah. Anne Wilson. If you're looking at personal stuff, there's Anne Wilson, the Wealth Chef. Her stuff's very powerful around mastering your personal finances, and she does some really great free video courses on that one. Tony Robbins, it's a big financial, it's quite a big chunky book, but actually a surprisingly easy read. That's a superb one. Also Keith Cunningham.
Yeah, Keith.
The Keys to the Vault. They did some quite good stuff around KPIs and mastering your numbers.
Yeah.
But it's an area that it's seriously worth a bit of investment in terms of getting some mastery around this, because it literally will transform your business.
Brilliant. Well, with that, it's now sort of 5 o'clock. So Serena, thank you very much. As an hour, which I think will transform businesses. Again, just implementing that stuff, that's going to get you on the right track from financial mastery, and help you, take your business to the next stage.
Great.
So thank you for a brilliant hour and a brilliant sort of webinar. Just a reminder, we have Susan Hallam on tomorrow at 4 o'clock. So hopefully see you tomorrow. But otherwise, thank you for coming on to today's webinar.
Thanks very much.